Well, so I kind of just think that people explain themselves through stories.
Yeah.
And you're. I kind of want to hear people's takes and stories on that. So I guess this is my first interview, and I listen to a lot of podcasts. I sit there and listen while I work and stuff.
Yeah.
So I think I think we have this now democratization of like storytelling on a mass level.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like what I want to go to. So I kind of want to. I'll just start with the first thing. And we'll drift around.
Yeah.
I kind of wanted to know, like, what do you think, like, your first historical event that you think about? Like, what can you be like? It was World War II. I just kind of want to start on that.
Like just in terms of like my favorite historical events, or
No, like, what's the first thing like you remember in like shaping you?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I mean, I guess shaping me. I mean, my childhood was uh, was pretty awesome.
Mm-hmm.
There was definitely some real world stuff. I mean, my parents divorced when I was 2. My mom, eventually landed back in Moab in 1991, and so they had split custody of me. But when I was with my father, my grandmother, who had me most of the time, they had a farm in a little community called New Liberty, which was about 8 miles from the state line. And it was a pretty amazing experience growing up on this farm. And, I had a lot of freedoms. I mean, I was operating equipment and driving and doing all the things that, you do on a farm at a really young age. And there's just a lot of great lessons and experiences you learn, growing up on a farm. In terms of, specific things that shape you. I mean, I would say definitely I felt like being from a broken home, I felt like gave me a little bit of maybe a chip on my shoulder a little bit, in terms of like I felt like I kind of, had something a little bit extra to prove. I mean, I was, where I went to school there, like in Loma and that area. I mean, most kids were from they had mom and dad were in the same house, and so I would say that's something that was, I can remember feeling at a young age, is just making sure that I was respected and that wasn't something that was going to hold me back, just because my situation was a little bit different. Grandma was dropping you off and picking you up from school, and no one ever, and so I would say that, shaped me quite a bit. I've got 3 brothers. My oldest brother's now passed away, but and they lived with my mom, and we were a very tight knit group. And I think anyone that's had the the pleasure of being able to grow up like with siblings where you're really close is good. We're very poor. I mean, both sides of my family were very poor. I didn't really know it at the time.
When did you kind of realize you grew up poor? Like, I think that's
Yeah.
having class conscious, like that spark. I can directly remember mine.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, I would say really like when I got into middle school, I started to kind of realize the difference.
Like my clothes aren't as good, kind of thing.
Yeah, and just you were kids are playing like all the sports, and their parents are running them around and doing all the things, and I was allowed to do some things, but I had to work. My dad, it was important that that you worked, and that you were expected to kind of carry your own weight. But
like, how much weight did you have to carry? Did you have to contribute to bills, or were you like,
No, I don't think my dad would say that I was worked too hard because of what his childhood was like. But like, I would say like starting around the age of like between 8 to like 10 years old, I was operating like tractors, swathers that cut hay, driving pickup trucks from like one field to another to like shuttle guys. And you know, by the time and that was like a every day after school and on the weekends thing. And then, you know, there was a point in time when I was in high school where I remember I was waking up at like 4:30 and watering a field of winter wheat with siphon tubes, you know, like the siphon tubes, like a concrete ditch. And then you like siphon and then lay the pipe down. And then in the, you know, obviously in the summertime it's hot and you're carrying the pipes. But I was irrigating a field before school, then going to basketball practice before school, and then going to basketball practice like 2 days after school, and then watering the field even after basketball practice. And I just remember feeling like, whoa, you know, this is busy. Life's busy. And I think I got, you know, you get frustrated. Like, so when I got into middle school, like all my friends were like, after school, they're going to their buddies' houses and stuff. And you felt like at the time, like, man, I wish I was getting to go play with my buddies, but I got to go work. But then, you know, looking back on it, it's like how lucky I was. Because I had a motorcycle and a 22 rifle, and I was able to drive my truck, you know, around at, you know, 13, 14, driving around.
Yeah.
So.
And you learn a lot of like just practical skills on a farm. I grew up rurally, and you know, just nuts and bolts, like that kind of thing. So you know, you definitely don't work like what would you describe your like life now economically?
My hands are getting soft, man.
Was that life propel you to like be like, dude, I am not living like this, or was it just like you chose something else? Or
I don't think so. I mean, you know, I feel better when I'm working physically. I think everybody does, you know, mentally and physically. I've done a lot of field work, like in my 20s, you know, staking mining claims and doing things like that, and I really enjoyed that. But you know, the way my career and life's evolved, you know, I'm most efficient making money when I'm on the phone and the computer and you know, dealing with, you know, with people. But I kind of like, I'm, you know, like we were talking about the shop, like I think and you know, and I've got a rural property that I wish I could spend more time on, and I think it's always like the goal, you know, where you're thinking like we're torturing ourselves, you know, sitting at a desk wishing, you know, to try to make enough money to spend more time out in the hills.
And the dream of every farmer is like to farm without having to worry about money.
Yeah,
like,
right.
This would be great to do.
Yeah.
You know, I also wanted to open that thing up, the question about history, to be like, you know, 9/11, right? Yeah. I was born in 81. I don't know what you
86.
were born. 86. So that was happening in high school. I mean, I can distinctly remember certain historical things that started to be like, oh, like this started me to get thinking politically, and I just kind of want to hear that.
Yeah, I remember. I mean, you know, some of my early memories in terms of like world events. Like I remember the Bush Gore like recall situation, and just thinking it was crazy that every day we come home from school, I remember asking my grandma, like, do we find out who the president is? You know, my grandmother and my dad's side of the family are kind of labor union Democrats, you know, JFK Democrats, and they always supported and vote for Democrats, still do. My grandfather used to sit and read, you know, a lot of Abraham Lincoln and stuff. So I remember that event really well. I remember the Gulf War when that happened, the first Gulf War. With
Bush Sr.
Yeah, I remember that.
Oh, huh.
Yeah.
I feel like I was in 4th grade with the first one.
Yeah, I remember just that. I just remember it being on. I just remember it was like seeing videos of the tanks. So what year would that have been? That would have been 80.
90. Wasn't it like?
I wasn't very old.
Yeah.
I remember seeing the video of the tank.
Because Bush Sr. won in like 92, I think.
Okay.
So it would be in early 90s.
Yeah. I remember the Clinton-Lewinsky scandal, like, you know, that being on TV and everybody, you know, really kind of honed in on that.
And you have this family, you've explained to me you have like a split family, right?
Yeah.
And so,
yeah,
you know, what are your takes on that now? Like, I think the idea of having a split family, like you could see, you're young, you're seeing Monica Lewinsky, and you hearing Rush Limbaugh scream, and that, doing his thing in that time period, and then maybe this other time period. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's good for me because, when you sit around the table, so like my dad's oldest sister is been a strong supporter of the Democratic Party. She's a former attorney for the FBI, really impressive lady, really, really smart lady. And, I listened to a lot of what I felt like were really pretty sophisticated conversations
Deep
about
cut
issues.
in the trench.
Yeah.
Not like I'm just listening to a pundit.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I definitely, my grandmother, my grandfather, my dad, my uncle, like I would describe them all as like high IQ, intellectual people having deep conversations, around a country kitchen table. And I think a lot of their values are, I would describe as like really strong advocates for working class, and workers' rights, obviously, civil rights. I mean, my aunt, one of the things that really made me think, and I remember her telling a story of when she was first got her job at the FBI. This must have been in like the 60s, but don't quote me on that. The highest position a female could be was a secretary. And then you think about how that shaped her experience and her views. Like if my daughter experienced that, if I experienced that, those are things that, and I still have those conversations. I mean, I talk to my dad and my uncle almost every day about, the national mess and politics and everything's going on. And we talk and debate and it's healthy. It's good.
What do they think about you as one of the leaders of the Republican Party?
Yeah. I mean, I think they get a kick out of it. They're very supportive, but I think on local issues, they also tend to be pretty, conservative.
A lot of people tend to be like nationally more liberal and locally more conservative.
Yeah.
That's like always been a trend.
Yeah. But they're very supportive, and my uncle's funny. He really likes to give me a hard time. So he'll send me like a clip of something going on in Moab or whatever, and kind of beat me up about it. Just
there's a lot going on.
Yeah, for sure.
That's kind of like I kind of view nationally. Like with the rise of Trumpism, is like realignment. There's realignment politics
for sure.
And I kind of what do you think about, like, are you familiar with the term? What do you think about like that national political scene going on?
Well, yeah, I agree. For instance, like the unions, right? This last presidential election, everyone made a big deal. They backed off to center for the first time in a long time, which people felt like was like an endorsement for Trump. And you're seeing, things kind of move around. I think it's like, I guess I think it's a cocktail of things. I don't know that anybody's really well, I would say some people are probably inspired by certain politicians or leaders, but I just think people are getting kind of exasperated a lot with a lot of these problems that we haven't been able to sort out, and so they're trying new things, and politics nationally has shifted so much since you and I have been engaged as young men, and just everything that's from. We're in a totally different world from, the Clinton years, Bush years, and Obama years, and then now look at where we've been in the last 12 years. And I think people are just, I think it's good. I think people are opening their eyes. And what I mean by that is I think everything's being reevaluated. I don't mean you're seeing outsider candidates like Bernie Sanders' run was a huge deal. The people, his following, his crowd, obviously, people are passionate about income inequality and upward mobility, is getting more and more difficult for people. Trump was obviously an outsider that's kind of completely taken over the Republican Party He was considered to be kind of a joke when he first came out, and so yeah, everything's just kind of fluid and moving around, and it's interesting for sure.
So where do you see yourself as like as a Republican? Are you like a populist Republican? Are you like more old school business Republican? Do you even consider, like, why did you take the R by the name?
Yeah.
Like, what would make you be like, well, I mean, you throw a lot of, like, respect. I guess, like, you're not like a Republican, like, oh, all those damn Democrats, kind of thing. That's what I hear from you. And so I kind of want to dive into that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, so my worldview and everything I've experienced, I definitely tend to be more conservative, like when it comes to government and government programs and things. Like I definitely think there's like an appropriate place for it and inappropriate places for government. I am definitely a free market person, but I don't know if you could really. I don't like really feel like I can be boxed in when I really look at like the full gamut of issues. So I mean, I'll give you for instance, like I definitely was not pro kind of open borders, but I also think there's like a certain line in terms of like immigration policy that's appropriate and not inhumane and things like that. And so I don't know that I don't know that I really feel like I'm like a certain segment. I'm definitely, there's some libertarian in me for sure. I want the government out of people's business, no doubt about it. But I also recognize that like I kind of see the parties as they have their kind of issues that are the most important to them that they focus on. And there are things like with the Democratic Party, like like income inequality is a big issue for me. I think the healthcare system is something that
income inequality is important on the right as well. I mean, it's kind of that the swing of the working class towards republicanism, I would say, is based on income inequality and looking for
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people feel like the Republican Party has better policies like for the economy, like as is, like it's gonna it's gonna put more money in their pocket in terms of like short term it's better for the economy. But I think that there are issues with tax loopholes and issues with the corporations that are like the other day was
corporate captures on both sides, right?
And I think the Democratic Party, at least like my raising was about like healthy working class and making sure that there's opportunity and that the people in a country where there's this much money flowing around, billions and billions of dollars moving around, like we shouldn't have people living in the street. We shouldn't have people going hungry. We shouldn't have a lot of the problems that we have. And so I kind of feel like, sometimes the Republican Party can get kind of caught up in like, just accepting the world as it is, status quo. It's up to the individual to kind of lift themselves out. But there are a lot of people suffering that, where there should be opportunities to improve their situation.
Yeah, so I think that comes down to like kind of the question I kind of want to dive into with a lot of both at the local level and kind of like take this from being national and start zooming in here. The idea that of the free market. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, I guess it becomes a question of how free do we make it? Yeah. And because what I see is that we had the Great Society and we had, when America was great, 90% of ownership, was distributed through a nice bell curve. Yeah. And then there's been an erosion of that. And I think that's, to me, the story of the wealth inequality. So, part of me is like, well, when government was big and highly regulatory, like we had better, FDR started this like wealth distribution program, and he didn't do it through like tax, well, he did do it through tax year and redistribute it here, but it was this idea of like distributed ownership. And I guess, when somebody says free market, I'm kind of like, yeah, like the invisible hand sometimes needs a brain attached to it, kind of thing. And like we've talked about certain things like, as we shift in the local ideas, like deed restrictions, like, because I feel that, I guess I'll use a quote by Barack Obama. There should be no such thing as the working poor. And so what we have here in Moab is people that are working that are not able to like make ends meet. So the idea of I think there's this idea in America that the wealth distribution comes through wages, right? Mm-hmm. Like if you were to take a certain lens, it's like we distribute wealth around through labor, and we also distribute it around through profit. And so I think most 99% of Americans believe in meritocracy. And I think that's failing us. And so that's where I'm like, well, the free market. So, I think the national debate is like, yeah, neoliberalism is a failed project. Mm-hmm. It's created like the billionaire class. It's created these wealth inequalities. Yeah. And so I kind of want to get your thought on that, and then just be like, locally we have tools of curbing, regulation of markets. Yeah. Kind of wanted to dig into that with you.
Yeah. So like one of my favorite FDR quotes is he was asked like what caused the Great Depression, and his response was, I thought it was amazing because he, it's just simplified it. And he just said, at some point you have, don't quote me exactly, right, but, 5, 7 people sitting around the poker table playing poker. And after a while, there's only 2 of them and they've got all the chips. Right. And so, his response is the, invisible hand with the brain has to step in and say, look, guys, we got to get some more chips in circulation because people are starving. Mm-hmm. And I think that's, I just see it that way. Like capitalism, is I think it's a system that works really well, but it's not perfect. I don't think any economic system is perfect. And that's one of the flaws is that things can get wealth can get too accumulated in certain pockets, bound up, and then people, there's not any chips for anybody else. Right. And so, what's the most effective way to redistribute that? And I think that was kind of a big part of his legacy and tenure is programs and systems to do that as he saw fit. And there's a lot of debate about, did he really get things moving again, or did the industrial military complex get us going again with World War II? And so
there was a lot of riots, of labor riots. I was just reading this thing on how the military really tried to keep down all the like factory labor strikes and stuff because they did not want that news stories to get out. And so, we're dealing with a large labor movement on there. So, kind of locally, with housing on this, my mind goes in 2 directions with housing because, Moabs, we've got these outside forces operating, which just distorts our economy. And the way we've been kind of fighting back has been through like innovative programs. And, I know you've been on both sides of those issues. Like you have helped, craft some things, but you're also, had been an advocate of like lesser restriction ideas. Yeah. I kind of want to hear your kind of take on that. Yeah. And also, I mean, half the other story, I think Moab's kind of
5 minutes.
Oh, okay, cool. I think Moab also has a wage issue. We have a bunch of jobs. I say that they're like summer jobs that became the jobs.
Yeah.
Or like, climbing jobs that were like, okay, like, yeah, they were cool when you were younger and now you're just doing the same thing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, so I I see Moab. I think you could really define from the late 1800s to 1950 as kind of a big co-op. There was some mining, grazing, like a lot of agriculture, orchard community. Obviously, it was even in those days like very remote before I-70 and and everything. And when mining came in, there was the same issues of the locals didn't like the ore trucks on Main Street. They didn't like the Texans, chasing the girls in town. And we just went through this kind of period of kind of transition. Now, that's a totally different economic, animal than tourism.
Well, I've talked with a lot of old miners here.
Yeah.
And like people are making really good money.
Oh yeah,
off of a socialized and subsidized ore program.
That's
right.
Yeah, for sure.
But that was one of the things is, Nick Murphy, who just died. He loved to drive me around and we'd talk. And he was just saying, one of the things he saw with Moab is like, people used to make good money here.
Yeah, I mean, my grandpa tells the story of, they were obviously really poor when uranium mining came in.
But a lot of them, like Nick was like, we started with a shovel and a Ford truck, and was able to be like, oh, now.
Yeah. Yeah, you hear stories of like kids buying their mom like their first washer and dryer, and like just, like having resources to like start to improve your quality of life. I think tourism is tough because it's obviously different. It's not that it's a smaller economic input than like the commodities business with mining, but it's more it's less cyclical, obviously, at least it has been for us. But it by nature, you're opening up your backyard to outside people to come and visit and spend money. And I think that's like what we're struggling with now is when you say like outside forces, it's like, well, that's kind of the horse that we saddled is outside economic forces to come in. Where do you where do you draw that line? And I think, like specifically with housing and kind of getting to your question, I think, if we have a way to stand up a project, like the land trust or, a project that's, there's land donated or it's subsidized, like, and we can deed restrict it. Like, I think that's great because it's a project that's designed for that. I think where the trouble happens, and I think what we're trying to figure out now is like, how do you force or incentivize deed restrictions on like an unsubsidized private project to kind of make it work? And I think that's where where I can be kind of critical on some of those things is because often the result is we just won't have a project because it won't work. And that's just what I've experienced. That's and I've worked with some really sophisticated multifamily developers, and I ask a lot of these questions and I see a lot of these things on my desk. And so, but I think we agree absolutely. And I think the point is like, I think what you're saying, and I think like when I hear you talk about these things, like there's a conscious, deliberate,
30 seconds.
There's a conscious, deliberate intention to make sure that there are safe and affordable opportunities for people in Moab when the economy and everything is really dictating that that's not the case. And that's we should dig in on that one more.
Yeah.
To finish that thought, like I think that's like a lot of the issues in Moab is I feel like the left-leaning community in Moab is trying to like carve out and protect this like sense of community. And I don't even think it's fair to say the left, because I know a lot of like locals that are more conservative that are wanting to find some balance with tourism where there's still a community. I feel that way. when I first ran for the county council, and a lot of my opinions on like the HDHO, I guess, and I voted for the lodging moratorium. I voted in favor of it because, you know, the rationale was we need to reevaluate our lodging standards. It turned into something different, but I totally, mourn for the Moab that I experienced growing up, where I felt like there was more of a sense of a community. It wasn't just a big machine. Now, we were all pretty broke in the Moab that I grew up in, but the tourism machine is very powerful, and it dictates so much to us, the price of our food, you know, and everything we need to live. And obviously the housing market is just it becomes kind of a runaway freight train in resort communities. So, you know, what's that balance? And, you know, no, Moab should not just be walked on and monetized. You know, it needs to be respected. There needs to be integrity in what we're doing. But how do we do that?
Yeah, what would your vision be? Like, to me, I'm like, all right, we need this, like 20% of our, you know, population does this, and then 30% does this. I almost think about like how you design a society to function properly. And what I see here, I see it all the time. I see these kids, they get out of college, and, you know, they're kind of, I've had a lot of roommates that are like, this fits this bracket, and they come here and they they get a fun job out of college, and some of them stay and some of them leave. And I think that's like a great asset. Like, you know, a lot of people have in my friend circle, I hardly know many people that were born here, but they came here and they like that sense of community. And I think that housing is such an important aspect to it. Like my house, I'm too broke to stay in, too poor to leave. Like, I can't sell my place because my mortgage is so low. So I'm like augured in here, which is a great thing for, in some ways it's golden handcuffs. But, I just think that the younger kids are completely screwed. Like, any graph that you see, it is not available. Yeah. And, this was something that we had talked about maybe a month ago. Was I had listened to the Charlie Kirk, Tucker Carlson interview, and Charlie Kirk's take was that young people were needing to enter this market, and they're just not. And that's a serious problem. And one of the things I see in it is, local land. I mean, small local governments have so much power over their land use codes. Yeah. And this is not a thing where, the federal government can, I'm sure they can throw money at problems, but we do have the power to fix issues. And I think, Grand County has a lot of like positive programs that resulted in housing. And that we can be like, yes, these work. And I just wonder, like, where do you see that? What's your kind of take on that? Like, because I believe with you, like, I'm not like every single piece of land has to be deed restricted, but I'm like, if we're going to have 20 to 30-year-olds that want to like kind of step into society, we need a place for them, or they're going to be a permanent renter class. Yeah, or they're not going to be able to live here. Yeah. I mean, and that's, you go to Aspen, Park City, Vail. I mean, essentially, the billionaires have bought out the millionaires. And it's like, you could be a moderately wealthy to even, wealthy person, but you can't afford to hang out in town. Right. And I think that's like... And there's places like, I've seen like Crested Butte, too. They have been at it. And last time I was in Crested Butte, there was people that were like, thank God for affordable housing we got into it. So it's tough because, my time spent in Moab as a young person and watching my mom struggle. She owned, managed and owned restaurants, and
some of them worked, some of them failed. And just, the working class in Moab, houses were affordable then, but there was an opportunity. People weren't making money. And so it's like everything's flipped. Like there's a ton of opportunity if you're willing to get after it and work hard in Moab, but your ability to kind of get ahead, is getting tougher and tougher because things are becoming so much less affordable. I mean, a new truck is $120,000, and a decent house to live in is $600,000-$700,000.
And I'd also say you have to be able to afford opportunity.
Yeah.
It's like opportunity may exist, but you can't quit your job because you got nothing in savings.
Yeah.
So I think I have felt that one.
Yeah.
Myself.
Yeah, and so it's like this decision, and that's kind of getting back to what we were saying earlier. Like if our local policymakers are going to say we want to protect a part of Moab for working class people or fixed income elderly, that's a bold goal. I think it's a good goal, but these are hard things to do because of how strong the market is and how it dictates so much.
Well, this is your profession.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, one of the things I had talked to several real estate agents, and it's like, we have these like affordable units, and they're still sellable, and it's still like a market for it. It's like we can have, like, I thought the HDHO program was a brilliant move because it does what governments do best. They create markets.
Yeah. And
I just wondered, I was reading.
It was my favorite. It was one of the only major land use policies or decisions during my tenure that I not only liked, but I really liked.
Yeah.
Because of the incentive approach.
Yeah.
And I think it was disappointing seeing it amended. I really felt bad about that because we invited all these people to come in and do something for the community. Like a lot of those early HDHO developers are like locals, really good people that wanted to do something. And they risk their whole, their behinds to make this happen. And I felt like the county kind of pulled the rug out from under them. I thought that was really wrong.
A lot of developers,
and it hurt. It's hurt us because if you talk to some of them, they won't do that again, and they learned a lesson, and that's unfortunate. But
I think we've learned a lesson too, like how to make that program successful. And I'm just wondering, do you have any kind of like, the city, I was just going through city code on kind of like the PAD, the planned affordable development.
Yeah.
Like, kind of like the nuts and bolts. I mean, a lot of these things you can be like, I'm pro affordable housing, but like, how are you pro affordable housing? Yeah. Totally.
Yeah. I mean, I got after it at that forum the other night because, I feel like current leadership, or it's just, we're doing things, but when it comes down to it, it's just in the specifics, there's nothing. I think I really like the land trust model because I think that we can develop new communities that have, if we have the right support. Like they had land donated, they had a lot of local support, tax exemptions. They've gotten state resources, and it's working. Mm-hmm. I mean, they would tell you that they're learning some things, and they're struggling. They built during peak cost, mm-hmm. and so they're struggling to kind of keep their rates at a point where, or I shouldn't say struggling, but they're aware of how difficult absorption can be if you don't watch your costs. I'm a big fan of that because I feel like we can go get land and we can replicate that. So I really like that.
So hold on a second. So I want to ask you, like, how can you support it as a mayor?
Yeah.
How can you support it as a real estate person? And, it's like, we can go get that. I'm like, oh, interesting. How can we go get it?
Well, I do. I mean, this is one of the things where I am comfortable saying where I feel like I'm light years more capable than my opponent because A, I understand it really well. But B,
I almost forgot we're in an election. I was
Yeah.
just like, okay, yeah, let's hear the plans and
Yeah,
whatnot.
so finding them land, raising money, from people or entities to purchase land or for down payments on loans is something that is very common. They've done it once. I understand those things. I would say, and I've said this before, and I'm surprised more people aren't catching on, but the CIB financing infrastructure for an affordable housing development is massive. Because if that would be a game changer for the land trust, because they're grants and low interest loans. And when I say low interest, we're talking 1%.
Yeah.
It's free money.
Yeah.
And so if we can find them land, the city purchase Walnut Lane. That's a big kind of topic of discussion. Like a lot of people want to hear me say I want to sell it and walk away from it. It's and I don't necessarily think that's the answer because we're in it this far, but whatever we do, we need to make it work. So, I mean, that's an option that's on the table is finding a way to line up the land trust with Walnut Lane and then have the infrastructure financed, publicly. And we're in the money there. So I think just, they understand their model. And I'm talking with them a lot and what they would do different and these different things. But so I'm very strong on that because it's just real estate development and it's an opportunity to do new things. Yeah. As far as like these deed restrictions on existing inventory and these policies to try to like take existing homes and inventory and flip it back into kind of like a deed restricted. I don't know that I have like really strong opinions whether it's like appropriate or not. I just know that the reality is those things are not working at a very
scalable.
Yeah, and I don't think like the way my mind works is I kind of tend to be more of like an elephant hunter. Like I want to go after the big thing that's going to get the most units, the best bang for the buck during the limited amount of time that I'm there. Yeah. Like I would like to see if we can make something happen, for Walnut Lane and get a developer like the Land Trust in there. Like I would like to see us having that cleaned up and going vertical like within a year, and really get after it. And now so there's some other things too, like the assured housing policy. That's an interesting one, right? So the assured housing policy was adopted by the city and the county, which is essentially kind of it's if someone comes in to develop a new hotel, RV park, then they need to either develop affordable housing or they need to make a payment in lieu of that development. It's raised a little bit of money. I would say it hasn't been super successful, but quite honest with you, like the local governments, they can't tell you how they intend to use the money. Mm-hmm. Like the city can't tell you, like, this is how we're deploying that to help the problem. The county can't either.
It's kind of like an earmarked general fund thing.
Yeah. And so
if
that
it came down to it, it's a honeypot we can rob for what,
Yeah, but okay, so that's up for discussion. Like, should that be used for waiving fees for certain kind of developments? Should that be used to acquire more land, for like a land trust? That's a big discussion to have, because I think what we're finding, at least with hotels and like larger lodging projects, is they're absolutely capable and willing to make that payment. Yeah. And you get 2 or 3 of those, payments in the bank, and here pretty soon you've got enough money maybe to take down another chunk of land. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I also do think like I think I'm pragmatic on a lot of things. Like, yeah. That's what old age will do to you, right? But I think that finding ways to kind of set up communities that are still in our ecosystem, where like, a young guy can go to somewhere out in Spanish Valley or LaSalle, or if that's like Thompson or Crescent Junction. And I'd love to see like, developments of single family homes where a guy can go buy a house for like, $300,000-400,000 on an acre type thing. Like I'd like to see more. I don't even want to call them bedroom communities, but just kind of, Moab's obviously the hub, but I'd like to see more spokes coming, and that is happening. Like that's totally happening in LaSalle. I mean, it's being developed that way. People are buying that, and I think that's like, I mean, some people love living out, in a more, remote area with the dark skies and kind of that quality of life. But if you want to live, if we feel like people should have a right to like live in Moab proper and do it affordably, it's going to get tougher and tougher just because of what's going on with the market and where we're going. I mean, we're at $500-600 a square foot for houses, and you look at the other markets that we trend towards, and they're $1,000 to $2,000 to $3,000 a square foot. So I do think the community, I will say, that we had a lot of people really have made housing a huge issue, and I don't know that we've gotten out ahead of it. I mean, it's definitely reactive, but we're definitely like debating, arguing, but working on things, and kind of figuring out our way through it. And there's three things that I hear from people about on my campaign, and housing's one of them with everyone.
Right. I guess, and then the flip side, what I was kind of saying earlier is, wages.
Yeah.
Because, and that's a tough nut to crack, because what do we do about that, right? And we're in the state of Utah. There's definitely like, I feel like Utah is definitely like a right to work state. It may not be the friendliest to like working class people, in my opinion, but I feel like there's that aspect. I've thought a lot about that and just kind of want to hear your opinion.
Yeah, I think everything that we're dealing with in terms of like costs for businesses that dictate, their bottom line and dictate wages is like a global economic issue, a national economic issue. I don't think you can kind of just legislate wages and have, success with that, like when you're dealing with small businesses and stuff.
But I do think the city can support people, right? Like there's ways, in one of the things Utah is really strong in is entrepreneurship.
For sure.
And so, like, I think that's...
Which is the opportunity in Moab, right?
Yeah, and that's where I feel that... that's the conclusion I have come to, without, like, massive unionization of, like, hotel employees and whatnot. Which, is a fantasy of mine that won't happen. But
that's what you're fantasizing about.
Right, that's what I'm saying there. I mean, we see economies like Las Vegas, which is down in the dumps, but they have a strong unionized thing. Because I mean, on a side note, I know this more about you. I see things where it's like money comes into Moab. What you said about the mining period made me think. I wonder how much money goes through Moab, like now compared to like the mining times, and how much gets retracted, because people's wages is a way to keep money built up. Like, how does money get amassed in Moab? And I look at hotels and businesses that are owned. Like, there's a lot of like locally owned things, and I'm like, great. Then I see corporate owned things that the profits are being sucked out of here, and the money's being sent to the stock exchange and to shareholders. And I'm like, that's a place where we could like retain wages. But this is a mayoral questions. What I do see though is how to start supporting entrepreneurship. One of the things that was brought to my attention is the explosion in home occupation businesses. And one of the things we've come up with on the planning and zoning of the county is, we have, that starts hitting a brick wall of zoning. But I also think that there's change opportunity. How can the city, I would love to see if I had, I grew up playing SimCity 2000. We're kind of the same age.
Yeah.
And it's like, what zoning would I make? And I would love like an entrepreneurial incubator center,
Yeah, I'm glad you're bringing this up.
So, yeah.
One of the things that I worked really hard to kind of help revive the USU Moab fundraising program. When I was elected to the county council, it was kind of on life support, and I drafted like a letter of intent. But it was I think it was an MOU, but whatever acronym between us and Logan, and we had, I organized a meeting. We had the president of the university, our state representative, state senator, Mayor Dave, and we just kind of got recommitted and documented what this was going to be, and we made it happen. We raised private funds. I helped, lobbied for an appropriation from the legislature. Mayor Dave and I were able to secure funding from the CIB for all the utilities. One of the things that we didn't want it to be was a fancy building on the hill. That's
kind of what we got.
Well, okay, I think you're absolutely right, and I think the opportunity there is entrepreneurial opportunity is exactly what we have for young people and everyone, and I think we need to have a better system, and we need to be more organized in getting younger people in a business incubator that's connected with the university and helping them find their way, matching them with partners that can invest, coaches. I mean, I could see myself like
the city has capacity. Is there a place for city government to do that?
Well, I think what I would say. I mean, when I was a county council member, I mean, it wasn't necessarily. I mean, I guess it was in the county, but I mean, between me and Mayor Dave, we were just leaders for the community, just making these things happen. And I think that as mayor, I mean, that's something that I absolutely would love to be a part of. Is kind of getting more reconnected with the fancy campus on the hill, and making sure that that we are optimizing opportunities for that business incubator aspect for the community, because it's huge, man. It's like, I mean, you've started a business and you run a business, like for a lot. I mean, a lot of people have great ideas, but it can be kind of daunting standing up a business, and if you've never done it, and having help do that, and with whether that's just starting with a business plan, or like being able to have a mentor or a coach that understands that business, just makes all the difference. So there's a huge opportunity there, and I think that's something that's there's a lot of opportunity for improvement, I think, in like the role USU Moab plays in the community. And I think because the city and the county are such stakeholders in making that happen, I think it's appropriate for us to catalyze that.
Yeah. Then you talk about USU. There's this other thing in Moab, another institution, and I feel like I get the vibe that the Republican Party has a thing against it, and that's the Chamber of Commerce. And I just kind of wanted to ask you, like, I've just heard it's like, the Republican Party feels that the Chamber of Commerce is a Democrat voting machine, kind of thing. And I actually joined the chamber. I think, I don't really understand what's going on there.
Yeah.
And I don't really have an opinion on that. I'm hearing that from different sources, and there was some citizens to be heard at the county that, was saying that. So I just kind of am like, you mentioned USU a lot, and we also have the chamber on there. And how do you feel that?
Good question. So I should clarify. I mean, I'm not a Republican Party officer, and I'm not.
Oh, I thought you were the vice chair.
No.
Whoa, what?
No.
Really?
Yeah, no.
I thought.
Yeah, no.
How? Wow. I swear I went to the
I was
convention, and you were the. Oh.
No,
Oh, I
I
stand
served as a
corrected.
chairman in 2014,
Okay.
15. I am a registered
Right,
Republican.
right,
I'm
right.
not dodging that, but I'm not like involved
Oh,
in
I didn't do
deep
my
party
homework.
politics.
good
That's
enough.
okay, but
Goodness
here's
Christ,
here's
I got nominated.
here's how I would
Oh my God,
here's
that's
what
funny.
here's what I would say about that is I remember being frustrated with the chamber during my tenure as a party chairman as a county because I didn't think they were getting involved in issues enough. And that was just my opinion. And their position at the time was like, we don't want to do that. We just want to kind of float at 50,000 feet. And my perspective on that was that's not right. Like you guys need to get it. And I think that so I haven't been like super engaged with the chamber, dating back before whatever you're referring to. It's gone through a lot of changes. I think I don't know if it went through a period where it did start to get involved and then it became certain businesses that are kind of, maybe their politics are more left leaning kind of got involved and understood the value of that. I don't think that, it is the chamber. I don't know that it's always been representative of like the whole economy,
Right. I just found it interesting. You're mentioning USU a lot, and I was like, well, there's this, like, it's kind of an organization. I mean, being in the city, it's like such the organizing factor of it.
And I to this day, I'm having conversations with them, and I'm going to attend their events, of course, and their debate,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't really. I've talked to them like chamber members. I've talked to folks that used to be involved that are involved, and I honestly I don't really know.
Oh, okay.
I don't really. Yeah, I really don't know. I think it's just another arena and an organization where there's a diversity of thought and they're just hashing it out. I think I will say this about that. I do think that there are folks that like the reservation system or the timed entry system in Arches is a perfect example. There are folks that are tourism operators or involved in the tourism business that have a vision that I think what they would describe as maybe more long term and wanting to see more like quality control in Arches. And then you have businesses that are just seeing the sheer impact it's had on their business in the short term. And there's just like everyone's pro tourism in there, but there are folks that kind of have more have a different vision. I think different visions, and some people are just they just want to kind of let's rock and roll and let the people do their thing, and so I think there's a lot of that going on.
Sushi. All right, we kind of wrapped up some things on there. I think there's some great off-camera stuff that I really liked on that about kind of where I want to take the next thing. How'd you get into politics? And I guess I kind of wanted to start from like that's why I asked about like. Yeah, how'd you get involved?
Well, so my family on both sides have always been, really engaged. My grandfather, so kind of a cool story. My great grandfather was the first judge in Grand County around the turn of the century. His grandson, who's my grandfather, was a 3-term county commissioner, had a lot of success, kind of finished in a period of economic downturn where they were trying to find projects to get people working, and it got really divisive kind of with the environmental movement. The Book Cliffs Highway was a project he pursued. There was a toxic waste incinerator project in the Cisco Desert that was like this federal project, and the environmental movement, he kind of clashed and ended his career But point being, I guess, is it's always been politics and government and issue advocacy has been a big part of my life. And so when I moved back to Moab in about 2012, and I got involved in I don't know if you remember the Bishop plan, and it was a federal land swap during Obama's second term. That was
Bishop, right?
Yeah, in Jason Chaffetz's office, and essentially what had happened was there was the lobbying for the Red Rock Wilderness wasn't getting any traction with the Obama administration, but the tribal issues were, and so kind of the environmental groups, the Red Rock Wilderness advocacy kind of went away, and then all of a sudden the Bears Ears popped up. And to avoid that monument designation, Rob Bishop, Congressman Bishop, and Congressman Jason Chaffetz came up with this idea that we could bring everyone together, bold idea to bring everyone together, environmental groups, industry people, and come up with a federal land trade to avoid the designation of a national monument. And I got really engaged on that, from the public land side.
How old were you at this time?
I was mid-20s, early 20s.
What were you how did you get engaged?
So I worked. Yeah. So I was working for a startup company that I was a partner in that was a environmentally friendly mining technology that was a solution mining alternative for Intrepid Potash has solar evaporation ponds, and they use a lot of the solution mining projects use the sun to separate the salt from whatever mineral. And we developed a technology out of Logan, Utah, a company called Thermal Management Technologies that was actually an aerospace company that we could essentially these ovens that were in a shipping container that would bake the brine with solar or natural gas and then separate the salt from the lithium or the potash.
So I was a mid-22-year-old.
Yeah.
Were you going to school for this, or were you in the mining world?
Well, my grandfather was in the uranium industry growing up in Moab and was a prospector. My mother actually started a really successful uranium acquisition company in the early 2000s, because uranium really. The price of uranium really shot through the roof again prior to the Fukushima meltdown in Japan. Nuclear was starting to kind of, get some traction. And, she took a lot of my grandpa's old maps and data and mining claims and started acquiring more uranium. And then we would, essentially, sell those uranium assets to mining companies. So it wasn't mining, but it was, kind of mineral acquisition. So I worked in that business with her kind of before and after college, but I was worked for a retired Congressman, Jim Hansen, who was the former chairman of the House Natural Resources Committee and the Armed Services Committee. And a good way to refer to him is he was the Orrin Hatch of the House from Utah, really influential. He was the Speaker of the House in Utah for a while, and he ran for governor against John Huntsman Jr. He lost that race, started a consulting firm, just consulting on policy. And so I got a job with him and his son, Joe Hansen. And we were doing lots of things, and is just kind of being in minerals and policy, saw this opportunity where we could, there was a need for basically more water efficient technology to be able to pull fertilizer, which potash or lithium, or anything of value that, is in demand without having to use all the water needed. And so when I landed back in Moab in 2012, still working on that project, got pulled into the lands bill kind of by the congressional offices as a local that understood all of the mineral assets in the area, understood public lands, but had relationships with people too. And that was really how I got started in Moab politics. And I had a really great experience. I mean, I got to know, some of these, people from environmental groups, and really, it was really a pleasure to work with everyone. I mean, everyone was there to try to make a deal, and so it was a lot of fun, working with the Pew Trust and, interacting with Scott Groen with SUA, and the Nature Conservancy, the Grand Canyon Trust, and we weren't successful in our mission, but that's how I got started. And then I saw the 2014 election, the county election, was kind of a landslide in one direction, and I just kind of got curious, like what's going on, with the local elections, and the Republicans were voting at a really low rate. They were in the 70 percentile turnout, and the Democrats were in like the high 80% turnout. And I saw an opportunity, being more conservative to kind of, I felt like, help the conservative electorate get more involved in things. And so I ran for party chairman, coming in kind of as an outsider. It definitely ruffled a few feathers, and it wasn't a contested race, but the chairman at the time was not interested. He wasn't really interested in giving it up, but he ended up doing it. And so I was elected the Grand County Republican Party chairman in my mid-20s in 2015, and I helped some city council members run their races, and they all lost by, some of them were single digits, but that was really kind of my first experience going up against the local Democrats and kind of their machine. Mm-hmm. And then that turned into there wasn't a lot of enthusiasm, I think, for the chance of success in the county council races. And I put together a ticket. Rory Paxman was running for re-election, and I was running, and I worked really hard, and just made it my mission to win that race, and we did. It was I've got a letter on my scrapbook, I guess, if you will, from the governor, who was the lieutenant governor at the time, and Grand County finished number one in Republican voter turnout in that year, which was almost 20 points higher than previously. And it was just it was just doing the work and having a good message, and so that's how I got into Moab politics.
So it's your relationship now with that Republican Party, because we were talking about, I'm a big believer in realignment politics. I wonder about, I work in a lot of people's houses around, and I wonder what Moab people are strange, right? You have just crazy different backgrounds.
Yeah.
And it sometimes really surprises me, people's politics.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you? I kind of want to I know how many liberal gun nuts do I know in this town?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
How many conservative I've tried to think how many conservative pro-labor people. I mean, I've talked to old miners that these were better when we were all unionized miners, and yet they are hardcore Republicans.
Yeah.
And I'm saying that those all are realigning now.
Yeah.
And so I kind of how do you, I feel when I started being a service plumber, when I first came here, I was working at the bike shop at Poison Spider Bikes, Yeah, I just thought everybody rode a bike. I thought everybody was like, "Is Oscar okay? Is he gonna die?"
I don't know. Did he got a organic Cheeto down the wrong went around the wrong
And
pipe?
RFK ended up getting him. So, I think about so I just thought everybody was like
Yeah, on their
a
side.
recreationalist, and then I started going into people's houses and fixing them, and being like, oh, like I always, you got a lot of old retired miners are a huge factor here, and you got the old hippies, like
Yeah.
people started Moonflower, and I just kind of one. I want to hear your thoughts on like the Moab electorate,
Yeah.
and then your relationship with the Republican Party, because what makes you not have a D next to your name,
Yeah.
what makes you put an R next to your name, and it was great off camera. You kind of had these like nice, we just had to take a break, and it was like, I was like, dude, it just like it shook my thing up. I was like, I could have, you weren't the Republican vice chair, and I'm just like, oh, okay, so like, how do you fit into that Republican Party, like, as here locally and stuff? Because that really surprised me that you weren't like necessarily like they're leading, like you're not a leader in the party, and you're kind of saying like, oh, hey, well, like here's how I kind of fit in. So
Yeah.
I wanted
Yeah.
to hear that.
Yeah, so I and a lot of it is circumstantial, but I would say like it was kind of interesting. So I was the chairman of the party, just led this really successful effort to get, like conservatives back in the mix in county politics at the council level. And I resigned as chairman, and and someone took my place. And I think I went in as a what you would say in the minority of a 7-person board, and some of the best advice I got from Jim Hansen was, when you're in these situations, you've got to put your best foot forward and really be as nice as you can to everyone to establish a good platform to like work together, which I'm not like, I think politics makes a bad guy out of me, but the people that know me, I think sometimes they get surprised because they've been told or read that I'm this like evil, person that's super partisan. And so I was in an interesting situation where like I developed some good relationships really early on with some of the council members I worked with, and so many issues that we were dealing with like really weren't partisan issues. But I had a Republican Party, I guess, that what I would describe was just like, really kind of a hard line approach with me. And one of the things that I didn't do, really well is I was in it and I was really focused on what I was doing, but I didn't have like a great channel of communication like with the guys that took my place in the Republican Party. And I didn't always take the time to kind of inform them, exactly what was going on, what I was doing. I think I was maybe a little overconfident, and we definitely didn't agree on a lot of things, because it's like you've got to work with people and negotiate with people to be effective. And I felt like really successful at that. But oftentimes when people are just digesting Moab politics through the Times Independent or social media, it looks a lot more partisan and hostile than it really is. So I went through a period after I got elected where I didn't see eye to eye with party leadership on everything, and things kind of broke down. And I wasn't really I didn't. It's not like I'm obviously still a conservative person, but we just our working relationship on issues just really broke down, and so and since then I haven't held a position in the local party. I mean, I attend some of the events, and I support, some of the candidates, that I really like, just more directly, but I haven't really, I've been really busy, serving at the state level in these things where you don't really come in contact with the local party much. But I think people that know me would describe me as like I'm definitely kind of my own man, and I bounce to the beat of my own drum. And you can't, all the Moab issues, like there are Republicans that do not like tourism. There are Republicans that they do like tourism, and their livelihoods rely on tourism. I saw that with a lot of county employees. Like a lot of county employees wanted kind of less tourism than what you would think, because the revenues are really being driven by a tourism economy. And so there's a lot of diversity of thought there, and I think that's true like for the Democrats also as well. But and so I would say the Republican Party, the gentleman that was chairing it at the time, we speak and discuss issues and that and whatnot, but there's not really a like a super coordinated system or anything. The race I'm running now is nonpartisan. I'm running on issues that are not partisan, in my opinion. It's really just good governance, and so. And the city of Moab is obviously like very diverse, and so you can't really go into a relationship with the city voters and expect to kind of bring in some kind of super partisan agenda or mindset. It's just not not appropriate, and that's not effective. And I don't think that I've ever done that. I took a turn making everybody mad when I was on the county council, I think in a good way, in terms of I'm a right and wrong guy. I look at an issue and I feel like I evaluate it, and if I feel like I'm on the right side of the issue, I go for it. And so
the thing you said to me earlier that kind of was surprising to me, you were like, I kind of went into as a county commissioner being like kind of anti-tourism. And then kind of were like, oh, that, like, he kind of backpedaled on that because he felt it was, like, too far. Just hit on that.
Yeah, well, so a few things happened. Like, if you look at my campaign and, like, my positions, like, back then, and, like, that's, like, 2014, 2015, yeah. I was, like, we got to diversify the economy.
Yeah.
Like, I'm pro natural resource development, not drilling in arches or selling public lands, but like there is a lot of natural resource development that does occur in Grand County. We're still, right now, we're the number 6 producer in the state for oil and gas.
Right.
And
I always like to think about like those are good jobs.
Great jobs. And that's been my life. I mean, Aaron, is a large part of my life is like seeing like how big of a deal the commodity industry is for working class people. So when I started, I wanted to see, I was like the balance, my op-eds and stuff was like, we need more balance, and natural resource development I advocated for because, and I still do, because we're all contributing to the demand of it. Like, let's reap the benefits, but let's be smarter about it. There's a lot of innovation that happens on that side. Mm-hmm. But I wouldn't say I shifted as much, but I think the left in Moab shifted quite a bit too, from pushing tourism as like the golden goose and like the clean like solution to an economy in rural Utah. That environment changed like really fast, and it became kind of an anti-tourism, I felt like. Mm-hmm. And so I wound up in a position where I'm really I felt like it was my responsibility to defend the businesses, and kind of like that's the one thing that we have going that's keeping everybody busy. Right. Like we can't compromise that. And I would say, I mean, since in the last, that's been 10 years ago, like a lot of the work and the things I'm involved in are definitely, tourism based. And so I'll always want to see more balance, in our economy and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, the arguments and the economic issues in Moab really have gone through quite a bit of a shift for sure.
Yeah. So okay, we'll get into hard stuff, right? Like, there's a couple things I'm kind of you kind of want the progressive younger voter. You want the Democrat voter. One of the things that I keep hearing, one of the biggest things is the change of government. And I mean, I gotta be honest, during that time, I wasn't really paying attention.
Yeah.
Right. I look around me and I'm like, well, I mean, like, I went through that time and it was horrible for the county.
Yeah.
And I've heard silly stories that, I mean, I don't really have much merit, or take much merit in it. It's like, oh, Curtis wanted to become called a commissioner and not a counselor, and it's like, you're just kind of like, there's a lot of stories out there, and one of them is that you went behind, like, you changed, you will say you changed the law, or we were out of code compliance with the state.
Yeah.
But you kind of made it out of code compliance with the state. And that was like a backstab to Grant County things. And because the voters voted for this. And so I kind of want to hear your side to that, because the thing blocking you from getting, I think, that Democrat vote and stuff is that, I was just reading like Bob Greenberg's old editorial.
Yeah.
Instead of like being like, who's the current vice chair of the Republican Party, I should have been reading that. I still, my mind's reeling from, I didn't research that well enough. But that's probably like, I see some of the hang up. They're like, the progressives, we've gone out and like, we've tried to trust some of these guys that are like, well, we're just moderate. And then they feel like they got, stabbed in the back by that approach. I just kind of want to hear your story on that.
No, it's good. I'm happy to talk about it because,
that's the hard one. That because, it's like, you were saying like, I'm a Republican, but I'm not like, it's funny. I still can't place you on like Republicanism, right?
Yeah.
Like, are you a populist Republican? Are you like, I'm a Moab local guy that like, Daddy voted Republican, I'm gonna vote Republican. But your family is mixed, so it's not really that. I'm just kind of like, you believe in free market, so does Elizabeth Warren, kind of thing. That's kind of like the identity that I still am like kind of like fuzzy. Like, is there like a national issue? Like, I'm just pro-life, is that the case, or is it like, it's not a secret. Everybody knows Curtis has like greater political ambitions. Is it like you can't win any race beyond Grand County as a Democrat, and you want to be like a Republican?
Well, there's a lot of questions in there.
Sorry. Like, I'm trying to unravel that whole whole thing. Like, it's all wrapped up in there.
Well, I would say like I'm not like I'm not out for the Democrat vote. I mean, I'm definitely a conservative. I mean, my positions are more conservative. I do think there's an opportunity. Like, I don't think the young progressive people in Moab are being served very well by this Democratic Party. I don't think the issues that they care the most about are being championed or like forwarded by the Democratic Party.
What
housing,
jobs.
I mean, they want to see infrastructure improvements as well, but yeah, I mean, particularly like jobs and housing. I don't, and so I think like what I feel like I bring to the table, I can do more for them. Right. And I think they can I hope that they would identify with me, because like I said, like I started off in Moab as a poor kid and have had to figure this out, and I've seen lots of things and experienced lots of things.
Moab's not as like, I mean, it's mixed. These races are very close, 50-50, like Democrat. And so, I see what you're saying is like, oh, I'm like a great moderate mediator, kind of thing. And so, I kind of see that.
I also like, I think I get pegged as someone with like political ambitions, I think, because I got in young, but like serving as Moab mayor is not really, if you were going to look at my like if you were going to look at like a strategy to like advance your career in politics, like I'm doing really well doing what I'm doing.
Right.
This is a risky race.
Yeah.
It's a tough one. It's close to home, and so you're jumping back into the mud pit at home. Like it's actually has very little to do with political ambition, and it's just wanting to fix my home and my backyard, because I see it as very broken. And so I think because I'll be honest with you, like a lot of my motivation, like I have been accused of someone that's like, just kind of self-interested and, and he's just moving on with his career, the stuff I'm doing, like, with the CIB and at the state level and stuff. And it's like, no, absolutely not. Like I want things to be well at home, and I want to be proud of my town in terms of like how it's performing and the quality of the parks and the facilities and the way they're treating the public, the way they're treating me as as someone they have to work with, and so and I like that about it, because it is nonpartisan, and it's not about really politics. It's about who can do a better job and make Moab a better place. But we need to talk about the form of government. So the county form of government. So the concern initially with the county commission in Grand County in the late 80s and early 90s was, and the knock on the 3-member commission is two people can team up and basically make all the decisions, and there's too much power concentrated in just a few people. And so, like, from my perspective, what the citizens did at that point was they went to like the totally opposite side of the spectrum. When you read that form of government, it's like the doctors are going to leave their offices and serve as legislators, and the farmers are going to leave the fields, and all the people are going to do this together, and everyone, and you're going to have this really flat kind of 7-member council where they're just legislators. But the interesting thing that they did is it wasn't really like, there wasn't a county manager that was an executive. The council members still had executive power. They delegated it to a county administrator, but the way that was functioning was one of the issues, I guess, that I saw, was that there was like kind of a lack of accountability. So like there were issues happening that were kind of more like operational issues, and like someone would come in and like, hey, like this isn't running right, and the council members are kind of looking at each other like, well, we're just show up for the meetings, and we're not, they don't actually oversee the performance of of the departments. And then the council administrator was just kind of like a supervisor of the departments, but not really like an executive that was really performing and acting like an executive. And so there was just this just missing piece in the government. And so that's just my opinion on that form of government, like personally. Kind of how that all thing happened was, when I first started to really study the form of government,
that's Elm.
Yeah, it's nice.
That's local.
It wasn't that it was, so it was non-conforming to code.
Right.
The problem with that is when you do things like, in this case, pass your budget, when you go to county code, it instructs you what to do by the form that you are. Mm-hmm. And so where Grand County's form was non-conforming and no longer in code, everything you do, you would get a stack of legal memos and for instructions and sometimes differing opinions. And so like I ran into an issue with the budget that was kind of a difficult issue where I really needed to go to the Uniform Fiscal Procedures Act and figure out like how to solve this problem. And I would just got this stack of memos of like 3 different county of attorneys, and not all of their opinions lined up. And I kept running into that with Grand County government. So it was like a lot of the most important functions of the government were basically being dictated by legal memo packets, and you could just kind of pick and choose the memo that fit what you wanted to do. That's like no way to run a government. And so for anyone that was saying that it was like working and it was fine, that's not true. And they know that. It was messy. And so what I after like spending a year on the council and like really like, going through that experience of ruling by legal memo, which I didn't think was appropriate. And then also like, seeing how ineffective I felt like we are, by not having full-time people in these positions, that like if the roads aren't being maintained right, which is just theoretical, I think Grand County Roads is amazing, and someone comes in and they're frustrated, if an elected official isn't accountable for that, like it's kind of a problem, like, and so there was kind of that missing piece. And so I actually placed on our very first county council planning retreat agenda, if you look, it's on there, I placed the form of government on that agenda. And you'll see in the minutes, I discussed it with the county council and Mary McGann, Jalen Hawks, like they understood my points. Like this isn't optimal. It's a touchy subject because the form of government is a touchy subject in Grand County. But there was acknowledgement that this isn't like an optimal situation, and like, can we tweak this legislatively to close these gaps, And so it started off as like a really, a very transparent discussion. I think where it obviously went wrong, and I definitely have some, like, I was still in my, I think I was 30, and I definitely don't know everything, but where I think
made some missteps.
Where it got tricky is so during the legislative session that year, there was a bill out of Weber County to address a form of government issue. And so, what I did working at the legislature and working up there is my comments in that process was, if you guys are going to make amendments and fix some of these problems with Weber County, can you guys put us on a path to kind of become conforming so that we don't have these issues? It wasn't really like we're gonna, this is gonna like pull the rug out from underneath all the people that love the council form, like even that's my opinion. It was, there are problems here that we've discussed, like how can we do that? And so it ended up, in the...
So did the other commissioners or council members, like, did they kind of know that was going on?
Yeah, and that's the part where it's kind of tricky, is like there was communication, but when it became so like hyperbolic, they ran from it.
It just seems like people are so bitter about it.
Well, because the story in the press was one guy goes up to the legislature and changes a form of government for everybody. And that wasn't the intention, right? But here's where it really kind of, what I didn't see happening is what I fully expected was they're going to kind of clean that up and send us a letter that says, Grand County, we need you to huddle up and pick a form that you want of the acceptable forms. And then and then you let the state know, okay, this is what we're going to do. And so it was like we had kind of huddled about it. It wasn't like we had dug really deep into it. We'd already discussed it. So what I was expecting was like, okay, yeah, we're going to get a letter, and the state's going to say we got to close these gaps because you've got to be one of these 4 forms. Council form, there was still 2 council forms, available to us. But instead of that, that happening, it kind of just turned into, it just got like turned into a really partisan thing where the Democrats were feeling like they lost something, and the Republicans felt like they gained something, and then everyone, you know, and then
I think it's interesting. People are blaming the current county partisanship. Oh, that was because Curtis Wells.
Oh, that's crazy.
Did this, and I'm like, there's a lot of stuff going on because of that.
No,
I mean,
look
that's
at
Mary's take, and I'm kind of like,
look at my race right now. We've
Yeah.
talked off camera. Like, it's being approached, in my opinion, by my opponents as partisan as it gets. It's a nonpartisan race.
Right.
The county operated the same way. It was hyper partisan.
Nonpartisan.
Yeah, I mean, so like that whole thing's baloney.
Yeah.
You know?
Okay. Yeah, I kind of wanted to ask on that, and it's like, you know, it's like you acknowledge you made mistakes. I mean, like my dummy being on, you know, I've been on trail mix, planning, zoning.
Yeah.
I've made some major like foot and mouth things all the time.
Yeah.
It's all the time, and you know, it's
The issue with the legislature
What do you
is
think?
like you don't have the opportunity to stop the legislature and say, can you guys hold
Right.
on right here? I'm going to go back and take a month and huddle with my
Okay.
people and figure out how to want to do this. And it very much is one of those issues where it's a difficult decision, you know, that people didn't want to address because it's so sensitive to people. But I will debate anybody at any point in time about the effectiveness of that circumstance that we were in and the many issues like I've talked about tonight. If you want to run a government and a county budget and anything, and anytime someone gets in an agreement, you have to defer to memos from multiple county attorneys. Like, there's a problem there.
right.
So there's a lot there, but
Yeah, I read like Bob Greenberg's like his thing, and I was like,
Yeah.
what are you actually like? Help me understand his argument in that. Like when he was like, I just kind of want to like,
yeah.
I want you to address it, and I want you to not steelman his argument, but being like, what really is their perspective? They're like, no, this is the Republican Party trying to like a power grab by allying themselves.
Yeah, I mean, it absolutely wasn't a power grab, but I mean, Kevin Walker oversaw the redistricting of all 7 commission, and definitely there was gerrymandering there. So again, it's like, I don't know how that would have been a power grab. It had everything to do with making the county more, I feel like the elected body more engaged and accountable, and the county functioning better. I think their argument, I think a lot of folks' argument was like, you know, that form was chosen, you know, by the citizens at that point in time, and it's holy and should never be touched. But you know, when you live in a county, you're living under a governor and a legislature, and they really determine kind of what you can and can't do.
Yeah.
And when you become so out of lockstep with that, like it becomes problematic for the citizens that are, you know, and so I think it's just a difference of opinion. But I also, here's the thing, that form of government was very much fused with a classic kind of election victory by, like, I think like kind of the environmental movement in Moab and Grand County. And I think that's it's a very emotional issue. And I think that changes to that just struck a nerve for a lot of those folks, that they just felt, you know, really offended by that. And I think the way it happened and the way it was covered in the press, absolutely, it was portrayed like I went up there and just ran my own agenda, you know, and that's just what it is. We also had a very hyperbolic newspaper editor at that time that was fired after a while, that sold a lot of papers off that, you know. He definitely ran with that, and I think, you know, working on something like, I was trying to make Grand County more effective. I mean, I really approach local government that way, like, let's be better, let's be more accountable, like, let's be more efficient in what we're doing. But the form of government, the public still determined, right, how that was going to happen. They formed a committee, they voted, they voted on a 7-member commission, which is
I remember.
And so everybody came together and a very diverse board. Bob Greenberg was on that, that board, and they worked it out, and so here we are. We're a 7-member board that's commissioners, legislative and executive. Before we were legislative and executive, it's just the delegated executive was just kind of lost, and here we are. So
I guess.
But the partisan thing, I mean, that's silly. Like, I mean, that's, it's been partisan politics, forever. I think the biggest disappointment that I had in my tenure was there was a lot of noise by the local media about the partisan stuff, but like my board was, I thought, really effective. We worked across lines. We got a lot of things done. I mean, I drafted a lot of ordinances, resolutions, and formed a lot of boards and did a lot of really good things that are still standing with merit today. Yeah. So that's the form of government story.
Wow. Well, it's definitely more than just feeding your ego of wanting to call it.
No, no.
So it's getting into there. Some more lighthearted things that would kind of think about wrapping it up.
Yeah.
15 minutes.
I'm just wondering about what kind of media, books, movies. What do you spend your time?
Consume.
Do you do you scroll the talk? Are you a Reddit guy?
Yeah, I am totally a nonfiction reader. Like, okay. I have not been. I just can't. I struggle. Now I can consume fictitious stories on like Game of Thrones. Love that. But in terms of like, if I'm going to pick up a book, it's usually like personal development. Like, I just read a book about like the collapse of civilization, a book about crypto.
Oh wait, what was it?
It's called the End of the World is Just the Beginning by guy's last name starts with a Z. I want to say it's like the author's name is Zeal. I'm not finished with it yet, but it's really interesting, and it's really kind of it really focuses on, as things break down, we're gonna forced to source things more locally, like the breakdown of the global economy. It's really interesting. I'm a huge podcast guy.
Oh yeah.
Who
are you listening to?
I like Lex Friedman quite a bit.
Oh, awesome.
Lex. So I just
I almost bought a black suit and tie.
That'd be amazing.
And I was like, I'm gonna do Lex Friedman stuff.
Yeah, huge Lex Friedman. I listen to Danny Jones' podcast a lot.
Don't know that one.
Danny Jones is great. He does a lot of like government stuff. He does a lot of he does some stuff that's out there, like
Jones?
UAP, UFOs. He's really he has a really good podcast.
This is the part where we talk about aliens.
Yeah, for sure. I want to. Yeah, no,
You want to believe?
Oh,
You're
definitely.
a Boulder guy, huh?
Oh, no question. Yeah, no, so I just read a book called. And you know what was funny is,
so you're a reader. That's
who knows that they can't put me in a box in Moab is the librarians.
Oh, really?
Because the stuff that I pull from the Moab library, I was watching. Have you seen the Have you heard of the Chris Bledsoe story?
No.
So Chris Bledsoe is like probably one of the most like validated UAP. Experienced people that had some pretty wild out experiences, but he has
the Navy pilot one.
No. But this guy has proof that the top officials from like the CIA and NASA like, investigated him, spent time with him, really like validated a lot of his stories. So anyways, one of his encounters was this image of the feminine, and it's this idea of like the feminine spirit. I don't know if like it's this lady that appears. And so he talks a lot about that. So like I went down to the library and I found a book, sure enough, The Return of the Feminine. And it was called The Return of the Feminine, and I think the world's spirit or soul. Man. But it's kind of more like this idea spiritually, there's like a masculine and a feminine. And we've been too consumed as a society with the masculine of like basically, material goods, polluting the planet. The feminine spirit is more like grounded with the earth, like all the hippie stuff, right? And so I went and read. I'm not finished with that either, but so I'm all over the place, man. I'm way into
every good Moabite is like an alien person.
Big into conspiracies.
They all are.
Love government conspiracies.
Conspiracy that you're like, well, just because it's a conspiracy doesn't mean it's not true, right?
Sure. Oh, for sure. So, especially this day and age,
just tell me when you're a ridiculous one. I mean, if it's lizard people, bonus 10 votes.
Yeah, the lizard people. Let's see, man. I mean, that I believe, though, that's like for sure. Well, definitely the UFO thing is real. I think I think a lot of the smartest, Jacques Vallée, who's a renowned physicist, also has like kind of been verified of having experience with like top government projects and stuff. Like people like him, like when you listen to them and you read their stuff, like they're really trying to tell you there's like as opposed to like the aliens visiting us from another solar system, this interdimensional stuff, and there's a lot of overlap with spiritual stuff. And so like I spent a lot of time researching that, and like it's really interesting to me, kind of that connection. I put a lot of time and thought into like the New World Order kind of 1%er thing. I mean, I definitely think there's obviously
rich people get together and they pull the strings. I mean, it's not a conspiracy.
Yeah, no, and I think some of that. I think there's some truth to. Some of it I don't. I mean, I definitely think. I don't know. I feel like I've gone through quite a bit of an enlightenment in terms of like questioning like everything. There's a lot of kind of getting back into the UAP thing. Like there's some pretty concrete evidence that like the government took physics, our whole physics understanding in academia, and they kind of led us down like a dead end street, and they took the real research and it went into kind of basically these where did the 21 trillion go? I mean, I've talked to
the Pentagon can't pass.
So without naming names, right? Like I'm a curious guy too. Like I have access to congressmen and senators. Like you think I'm not asking them the questions I want to know? That's what I ask them like almost every time. It's like, when you guys get into the back room, what in the hell are you doing about the debt? This is crazy. And I've had a congressman tell me, you didn't think you what did he say? The more or less it was like alluding that a lot of that debt is attributed to kind of black projects and stuff like that. So I don't know about the lizard people. I've never seen one.
That was too far.
I watched a deal.
Flat Earth.
Yeah, I definitely watched a deal the other night about like underground tunnel systems. I don't know how I feel about that, but I love podcasts, and I think
so. When you like, other than those types, like, what other?
We could get really out there.
We'll reel you in a little bit. Like, I'm just really into like, Lex Friedman's great. So I'm just that's just interesting. You're reading, listening to podcasts. You'll watch fiction. fictional stuff.
Yeah,
and you got kids, you're gonna be watching Frozen. Like, what Disney theme song is stuck in your head?
Oh, I'm in it, man. I'm in it. Yeah, I could recite Frozen 1 and 2 word for word. I'm curious about. I mean, I'm definitely curious about, kind of what's really going on in the world. But I think that, I find myself reading a lot about cryptocurrency. I do read a lot about, kind of global politics. I'm pretty fascinated with, kind of that dynamic and what goes on. Like, this Ukraine-Russian war, like really terrible, obviously, but like the dynamics at play there, like in terms of like the motivations of all the parties is just wild and
all the a lot of corruption flowing through it's a lot of oligarchs, power, you got all that going on, and so that's cool. That's just, I always like to know what people are thinking, what they're into.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. History too. I like
what history?
Randall, more natural history theory. Like Randall Carlson, I think is pretty amazing. I don't know if you've ever followed him, but like he has a lot of great theories about kind of the historic floods, and when those have occurred and wiping out ancient civilizations that were. I mean, he did Netflix. I think
right.
Yeah, so
he's kind of like, there was a big triad die-off, or
that's his buddy. That's Randall's kind of, he hangs out with that guy. Yeah, you're talking about the lost civilization. His name is he's a journalist, but I mean the stuff they're finding in the Amazon is unreal.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean the stuff like essentially. I mean we're kind of learning that Egypt is is not what we were told or what we thought, and I think that stuff's just fascinating. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can't get enough of that.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I know. I hate how it's labeled such like a bro thing. Like, oh, you're just like a man. Like, I'm like, this is one of the major shifts I've seen in society. You used to go, like, I'm on these job sites, right? And you used to go on a job site, and it was just like classic rock radio, and like you just listened to it all the time. And one of the major shifts, and I think this has such a large impact on society, is that I'm like, hey, what do you listen to? I listen to that Lex Friedman podcast, and I'm like, dude, really? Like, you're a drywaller, dude. You gotta listen to this one. And guys are like trading these around.
That's cool.
And I just see this as in like the brosphere, and I'm like, I think that it has huge implications.
Totally.
Beyond what we're doing. So
I mean, people are becoming more enlightened and more educated, and it's amazing
for
to
better
see.
or worse.
For better, But I mean, I definitely think like there's, I mean, from my perspective, there's like absolute realization. It's like, oh yeah, like there's a lot of, you should question, a lot of things, and the powers that be haven't been straight with us on a lot of things, and that's interesting stuff. But
cool. Well, I think you said we have like just a couple minutes left. Well, hold on just a second. It's been great talking to you.
Yeah, thanks, man.
On that, it's getting late, and Oscar's mom is worrying about him.
Oscar's mom's worrying about him.
Thanks, Oscar.
Aaron, I want to say, thank you. I think you do a really good job, on the planning commission, but I think you're a great advocate for the community. You obviously care. You work really hard. You educate yourself on the issues. You're very open dialogue guy. So thank you.
Yeah. Cool, man. Let's wrap it.
All right, let's do it.
Woo.
Cool.